A fleet of ships, an ocean of ambition, and a journey that would change the course of the world. In 1498, a Portuguese fleet touched the shores of India, and everything changed. This wasn't just another voyage, this was the moment Europe broke into Indian Ocean and hijacked the spice trade and began a new era of global empire. But what's often skipped in the textbooks is just how bold, brutal, and world-shaking journey of first European nation to reach the India really was, and why the West never looked back and is still relevant. In the 1400s, Europe was hungry, not for land, not yet, but for flavor, spices, pepper, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and many more. The things that made bland food taste like wealth. Back then, spice was gold, quite literally. A few bags of pepper could buy you a house. But there is a problem. You see, all the spice came from India. Still does. India produces world's 75% of spices. So to get there, you have to go through Muslim empires, Arab traders, Persian merchants, and eventually the Ottomans, not so friendly to Christian merchants. The legendary Silk Road had become a beat-up toll booth nightmare for the merchants. Different Islamic nations controlled chunks of it, and merchants had to cough up hefty taxes just to get their goods through. So Europe looked to the sea, and just in time, they had been inventing all these gadgets, magnetic compass, crosstab, astrolabes, and these new slick ships called caravels and carrack. Basically, the new age of GPS was being born, 1400 style. This hunger started the age of discovery, and guess what? Portugal was leading them. Prince Henry the Navigator, a royal with no sailing experience but lots of ambition, kept sending ships down the coast of Africa, chasing wealth in gold, paper, and yes, slaves. The problem? Tons of effort, not much reward. In 1453, Ottomans captured the Constantinople. Overnight, a 1,000-year-old Christian gateway to the Asia was slammed shut, and Europe, it panicked. It lost its mind, especially Portugal, a tiny seafaring nation with big dreams and even a bigger naval budget. After Henry died in 1460, the king basically outsourced the whole African operation to a Lisbon businessman named Fernão Gomes, like handing the national navy to the Amazon. Fast forward 1481, John II becomes the king, young, sharp, and broke. To fill the royal treasury and break the feudal system, he doubles down on Africa: gold, slaves, paper, anything that sells. But his real obsession? Spices. Europe's spice trade was run by Venice, who used overland routes through the Middle East. John wanted a sea route, something bold, something profitable. So he sent spice across Egypt and ships across Africa. Finally, in 1488, Bartolomeo Diaz rounds the Cape of Good Hope, and in 1491, Pero da Cohilba had gathered information for sea route to India, and he recommended that Portuguese should sail south along the coast of Africa and Sea of Guinea. The first objective in the Eastern Ocean, he added, was Madagascar. From this island, one could reach Calicut. Boom! A new door. In 1495, John II dies, and enter King Manuel I. In 1497, King Manuel I sent Vasco da Gama to find the sea route to the Indian Ocean, using Bartolomeo Diaz and Pero da Cohilba's findings. Gama was not a nobleman, not a poet, just a hardened sailor with a temper, who has sailed for King John II for nearly 14 years, and in 1492 has proved his mastery over the sea in a mission to the port of Setpool and to the Algarve to seize the French ships in retaliation for peacetime depredation against Portuguese shipping. Da Gama left Lisbon on 8th of July 1497 with 170 crewmen. The crew included Portugal's most experienced navigators, Pero de Alencour, Pedro Escobar, Joan de Coimbra, and Afonso Goncalves. They had a ship called Sao Gabriel, a carrack ship of 178 tons commanded by Gama himself, and a São Rafael, twin brother of São Gabriel, commanded by Paulo da Gama, brother of Vasco, and a São Miguel, a caravel ship commanded by Nicolai Coelho, and a storage ship commanded. They hugged the coast just like others before them, cruising past the Tenerife, waving at the Cape Verde Islands, and when they reached the coast of Sierra Leone, Gama did something gutsy. He left the shoreline, pointed the ship into the deep blue, and sailed into the unknown, hoping to catch the South Atlantic gyre that Bartolomeo Diaz had discovered in 1487. They crossed the equator and wind howled. The boat probably stank, and land nowhere in sight. For more than 3 months, they were just a dot in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, sailing over 10,000 kilometers. That's like rowing from Delhi to Sydney without touching land, which was never done before by anyone in recorded history. Finally, land. The African coast came into view on November 4th. It was Cape of Good Hope. By December, they had passed the point where Bartolomeo Diaz had chickened out 10 years earlier. These were the waters no European had ever sailed before. It was Christmas time, so they named the nearby coast Natal, Portuguese for birth of Christ. Nice touch, right before things got rough again. In March 1498, they landed in Mozambique, a Muslim-controlled port, part of a thriving Indian Ocean trade network. Da Gama shows off with low-rent gifts and zero idea how things work around here. He pretends to be Muslim because, well, maybe that will work. The locals get suspicious. Things get heated. Da Gama panics and fires his cannon at the city on the way out. Next stop, just up the coast, Mombasa. The expedition resorted to piracy, looting Arab merchant ships that were generally unarmed trading vessels without heavy cannons. The Portuguese became the first known Europeans to visit the port of Mombasa from 7 to 13 April 1498. The welcome here? Let's just say they weren't greeted with flower garlands and left the coast very soon. Just off the coast is Malindi. Now in Malindi, these folks didn't like Mombasa either, so they welcomed Vasco da Gama. Friendly neighbors, right? Even better, they hooked him up with a local navigator, someone who understood the monsoon winds. Who was he? It was an Indian. There are some controversies over his identity. With a little local wisdom, Da Gama finally made the push across the Arabian Sea, and on May 20th, 1498, they reached India. Land ho! They landed near Kozhikode, in what is now Kerala, gateway to the spice world. The local ruler Jamurin rolled out welcome mat, procession guards, the works, but then Da Gama presented his royal gifts. 4 red clocks, 6 hats, some corals, and 2 barrels of olive oil, a little sugar and honey. The Indian officials were not impressed. The local merchants, Muslim traders who had been dealing in spices for centuries, they called Gama a pirate. Not totally wrong either, considering Mombasa. At one point, Da Gama spotted what he thought the statue of Virgin Mary. He knelt. It was Parvati. Awkward. Things fell apart quickly. The Jamarian refused to let Da Gama leave a trade rep behind. He wanted gold for custom duty, not corals and hats. So Da Gama left, but not before grabbing a few nairs and fishermen as hostages, just to leave an impression. It wasn't the friendliest first meeting, but it happened, and the world would never be the same. More than 5 centuries have passed since Vasco da Gama's small feet rounded the Cape of Good Hope and dropped an anchor on the shores of India. Portuguese were the only European nations to sail the Indian Oceans for the next several decades. But make no mistake, his voyage still saves the world we live in today. When you look at the shipping lanes that crisscross our ocean, or global markets where black paper, textile, and tech stocks are traded side by side, you are looking at a world built on that first sea link between Europe and Asia. Da Gama's voyage didn't just open a sea route, it shifted the very center of gravity. It marked the beginning of global economy, where the East and West would no longer be strangers, but rivals, partners, and eventually codependent. You can hear the echoes of that journey in the language, food, architecture, and even in the colonial scars that still shape the political conversations today. It wasn't just spice and gold. The sea route to India opened a door not just to commerce but conquest. It set off centuries of European imperialism, extracting resources, rewriting cultures. And yet, the story didn't end in 1498. We are still sailing in the wake of that voyage. Our supply chains, our economy, even our conflicts, they all flow through these sea routes. First carved by desperation and ambition of Europe that wanted to reach India without asking permission.